Morning, bonjour. My name is Simon Duchesne. I'm full professor in the Department of Radiology at Université Laval. Here to talk to you about Platform 3 on neuroimaging for the CCNA. Before we get there, I'd like to talk about who was involved in phase 1. Basically, we had representation from all across Canada, from University of New Brunswick to Laval, Montreal, McGill, Sherbrooke, and UQTR in Quebec, to Toronto, Western Ryerson in Ontario, Alberta, Calgary in Alberta, and UBC, UNBC, and Simon Fraser in British Columbia. What was our purpose? I was very glad and honored when Howard asked me to lead Platform 3 back in 2013 for the CCNA. And as you know, the goal was to support Compass ND in its targeted recruitment back then, and to provide imaging characteristics, since imaging was going to be an inclusion criteria. Much like ADNI, everybody in CCNA and Compass ND was to be scanned using MRI. So this is what we did at baseline. Baseline still continues, as you will have heard from Platform 1. The environment in the last 2 years was quite difficult to finish recruitment, as you know. And so we are still working on the baseline scanning acquisition. I would like to point out, you will have heard that we did not have the funding in phase 2 to provide for a 2-year follow-up for everybody. And I will come back to that later. Certainly, the impact on phase 3 for the 4-year follow-up. So the goal of the platform is to provide MRIs so that we can have accurate brain measures that can then be correlated or analyzed in the teams with respect to whatever other biomarker or point of interest that they have. So there's a spectrum within the Platform 3 and especially Team 9, because many of the people that analyze brain images on MRI belong to both the platform and Team 9. But the platform tries to really restrict itself to acquiring the images and providing brain measures without doing any kind of correlation per se to any of that. We really leave that to the teams. So what have we been involved in defining a protocol, implementing it, acquiring some data, and performing some studies on the metrology of MRI. The protocol itself was started in 2013 by a bunch of researchers that were in different studies, and we all knew we were going to be in the CCNA at some point. So we decided to create a protocol, the Canadian Dementia Imaging Protocol, which was published in 2018. And since then, all of those studies have used the CDIP to perform their scans, which creates quite a large group now of individuals with the same imaging characteristics, and therefore allowing comparisons between the studies. The CDIP in 2013 was done before ADNI 3. It was based on the ADNI idea, yet it was a bit more advanced than ADNI was at the time. So all of our scans are accelerated, for example. We have some anatomical scan. We have a strong emphasis on the vascular pathology scans because we are really a mixed presentation Compass ND, as you will know, as well as diffusion and resting state bold fMRI for connectivity. The protocol has been declared as harness compliance for those that know, so for the study of cerebrovascular disease, which was published also in 2019. We've implemented the protocol, and that's also one difference back then with ADNI, is that all of those acquisitions were from the start ported or harmonized across all 3 major vendors, so GE, Siemens, and Philips. And since then, we've pushed the protocol across 24 sites in Canada. That's where we all recruit. Some of the data includes not just the participants, but actually the human phantom. So yours truly, as you can see here on the left, as well as the geometric phantom, which is at every site. So probably the first data was actually my own head that was released through CCNA, released through the Canadian Open Neuroscience Platform, and for good measure, released on the nitric.org website. So this is important for imagers. It's a nice data set that allow a lot of analysis of variability within scanner, across sites, across time, is very, very useful for us. Same for geometric phantom. We're in the process of curating all this data together and releasing it as well. The participant data is part of the LORIS platform, where it is quality controlled as well as receives a radiological read from the teams of Eric Smith in Calgary and Sandra Black in Toronto. Now, some of the studies that pertain to the platform itself, again, those are studies that relate more to the metrology, so the science of MRI. For example, the actual data on the human volunteer, which was published. Measurement variability following an MRI system upgrade. What happens when you switch from one platform to another? A reliability assessment of tissue classification in gray and white matter, for example, in multicentric and multi-scanner situations. In the vascular area, we've defined, Eric has published just recently in the Canadian Journal of Neuroscience, the vascular contributions from the protocol to the COMPASS ND study. In terms of diffusion, we are in the midst of preparing a manuscript. If you look here, this is another example of all different MRI centers from left to right. And this would be the variability in fractional anisotropy of a part of the corpus callosum of the human phantom across centers. So having an idea of the variability like this for any one of the metrics that we can extract from MRI is extremely important when the time comes to actually do this in real participants. Lastly, in terms of resting state, we've done much the same work, looking at the consistency of resting state networks across sites, across time, and vendors, and releasing this process data. So in terms of the science itself, if you will, the relationship of all those markers with Alzheimer's disease or any other dementia, this we leave with the teams. We know that teams 8 and 9, 10, 17, and sex and gender group have been interested in using, if not have used already, some of the data, to their purpose. So I don't want to go back in there. I presume that in their own presentations, you will have seen data from MRI coming from platform 3. So in phase 2, again, we didn't have funding to do 2-year follow-up, so everything I'm going to talk about is on the baseline scans. First, we will extend a bit the membership. Brad McIntosh from Sunnybrook, I'm trying to recruit him to co-lead the platform with me in terms of image acquisition QC, which would free me up to work more on the image processing. In terms of the rest of the work, we want to work on the protocol, some small incremental improvements in the protocol that we have that we can implement right now, and especially the definition of the CD 2.0, which should be legacy compliant, but we want to increase the protocol if need be to be ready, for phase 3, so scanning at 4 years after baseline. We will disseminate this protocol and continue to do a quality assurance, of course, resuming site visits as soon as we can, COVID depending. In terms of data, we want to increase the amount of processing we give. So process data we can provide, for example, cortical metrics, white matter hyperintensities, tractometry, resting state networks, all that so that the teams can have ready-made or ready for analysis data for their work. In terms of studies, we want to keep for ourselves a summary of the Delphi process for the CDIT 2.0 protocol, and 2 reliability studies, one on resting state fMRI, this time with multiple human phantoms, and the continuation of the diffusion reliability study that I mentioned. My last word will be on phase 3. Again, I just want to reemphasize for the 3rd time that we sincerely believe that at 4 years, we should be scanning again, everybody. We fully realize this is a costly proposition, but I think it's important since MRI provides a wealth of information on the status of the brain. And therefore, we urge you to consider this in the priorities for phase 3. With that, I thank you for your time. I hope if you have any questions, do not hesitate to have them passed back to myself. And thank you for your attention.